Welcome to How I Met My Broker
by Strategic Brokers,
where we uncover the stories, strategies and insights of individuals who've built significant wealth
through smart leverage.
Get ready to learn, be inspired and take your property game to the next level.
Well, good day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, editor of Smart Property Investment, back today with another episode of the How I Met My Broker podcast. And today I have a fantastic guest joining myself and my co-host, Hung Chuy from Strategic Brokers. And we're going to be unpacking actually quite a few things in the world of property investing. Hung, how's business going? Big start to 2026 for you?
Yeah, very exciting beginning of the year. I think we done an episode obviously a month ago talking about how everyone needed a bit of a breather. So the breather was nice. January was a bit slow, but February came and Jesus Christ, like it's like almost like all the work from January just got piled into February.
Just avalanche.
Literally doubled, like the numbers are doubling in the last 2.5 weeks. Yes, so it's been a little bit crazy.
And with a lot of complexities in the borrowing market, that's where Strategic Brokers comes in and extends their expertise. But to start us off, you and I have a bit of a formula on this podcast. And if our listeners haven't realized it, now we get in a lot of experts. And today we've got Dawn Fouhy from Future Proof Advisory. Now to start us off, how do you two know each other?
I don't know. Maybe I'll start this one so Dawn can elaborate. So because she might be a bit puzzled about how this happened. So my usual drill is to send fire emojis to people through Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Actually, this is a reoccurring story of Hung hitting people up, our guests, on their Instagram DMs.
yeah. So I started. When people put stories up, you start throwing a little heart,
Yep.
2 hearts, heart fire, double heart fire,
And that's when it gets serious.
Yeah, I started throwing them to Dawn for a bit, but then I realized I was barking up the wrong tree.
He definitely was.
Is that are our stories aligned? I think they are.
Yes, they definitely are. And I was like, who's this? Strategic Brokers. And then when I did a bit of digging and realized who Hung was, it was very humbling to have Hung recognize what we were doing at Future Proof.
Yeah, I think it came off the back end of Dawn doing a few potties. So I was, I'm what do you call it? Somebody who frequently listens to potties as well as obviously starting to record. And I think with Dawn, a lot of things resonated with me, just the way that she's very raw and just willing to say it how it is. And, I guess it's quite similar to the way I am also. No filter, I guess, which I loved. Yeah, and then the style of buying, everything kind of matched up with what my thought process was. And then I think I kept hitting her up, and I looked at the time frame actually before this. It was like a month before our initial interaction before we finally caught up. And I think we tuned into each other's potties and went from there.
See no response, but finally met in person. No. So when did you guys actually meet properly?
This time, right now.
This is our first time meeting
Really?
in person.
Yeah.
Because I'm obviously in
Melbourne.
But I just really resonated with Hung, and hearing his story and his origin story is so inspiring to me. I've listened to it a few times on different podcasts, and he's just somebody that I look up to with his values in the industry, and also how I've seen him, with some of our clients and his other clients and what he does. Him and his team at Strategic Brokers are exceptional at what they do, and he's definitely a leader in the industry in my eyes, and somebody that I really trust.
Now, the good thing about the How I Met My Broker podcast is, we bring a lot of expertise in. Obviously, we have Hung and your finance broking expertise, and then we do have a fair few BAs out there, and it's always good.
What? A few BAs?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's
Cheating on you.
Is there?
4 episodes in one
I'm
day.
only joking. I'm only joking.
Well, I mean, it is good.
There is a few
because
out there. I'm only joking.
with Hung seeing all the deals, he's got a good filter. He gets to pass through BAs that he can hand on heart, say, hey, these people are actually doing quite a good job for their clients, versus people who Hung's like, well, I don't want to be seen anywhere near on the same podcast as them. You and I have known each other for quite a while now, and I've always really long respected your investment style and your investment strategy. But Dawn, for people that are tuning into the How I Met My Broker podcast for the first time that might not be familiar with you, what's your strategy, what's your style, and what makes you a bit different from maybe some of the other BAs that are out there?
For us, we are it's really a private one-to-one advisory. We are a boutique agency, and We purposefully don't work with that many people at a time to maintain quality. Our whole ethos is we buy for the future buyer. So we buy for an owner-occupier being your buyer in the future. We time our entry into markets to get you the most amount of growth in the short term, but the area has to have long-term fundamentals. That's what we see as really future-proof investing and protecting the buyer.
And you are a bit different from a lot of other brokers as well. What makes you different from other brokers, Hung?
Yeah, I think similar to Dawn in a sense, not in the sense that we're so boutique. There's technically about 15 brokers with us now, but everybody's been trained under my wing in the sense that we have all of the same mindset pieces put into place. Everyone in the team, they pretty much are doing what the customer's doing. So we're building our own portfolios, which is really, really important when you go to a broker that, you know, they might have their own trauma that they bring into the deal, for instance, whereas the guys in our team, they're all trying to build their future, right? So they're actually in the game. They're using buyer's agents like Dawn, like the other ones that we introduced into the show, because we know that they get the job done and they do it right in the right way. So you could have all of the bells and whistles, but you just have that wrong vehicle and that will just be the difference, right? So, you know, having a great buyer's agent is very core to that. And we find in our team that we're almost the centerpiece sometimes. They might come to us first before the buyer's agent, or they might come from the buyer's agent, or they might come from the podcast, or they might come from, we don't do much marketing, to be fair. So they always come from a B2B channel directly from these podcasts is where our clients come from. So they're coming in with quite a wealth of knowledge already. And so we just want to accelerate that and get them to the next level. I think it's something that we do better than anyone else, I believe, and why our business is growing.
And obviously you've got good BAs out there. They're like Dawn that acknowledge that, hey, this person's probably been saving up for, if it's a first deposit, you know, they might have been saving up for a couple of years of their hard-earned. And you gave examples, Dawn, when you and I were talking before the podcast about people that come from quite working class families. They had their parents as guarantors as well. But Hung, have you seen examples in the past of where these deals come past your desk and you're like, whoa, no bueno, man, where did this come from? I reckon you should second guess this or investigate it, interrogate a little bit further.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like anyone who's trying to spook someone and they hear that we're their broker, will be warned, you know, because we're going to talk to you about that. We're not going to just turn a blind eye to try to close a deal. You know, if you come to our desk with a deal, I'm going to tell you that's a deal.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that we do. You know, we actually look, reflect, and then we share, I guess, as much information as we can. So that's why I love doing these poddies, because it's actually free information out there, right? And these guys who are coming with the crap deals, I'll send them a whole bunch of links to all these poddies that we did. I'll listen to this one, and then come back to me after 24 hours and see what you think about this deal that you're going to buy.
So you force them to educate themselves.
Yeah, and if they don't come back, then you're not our customer. You know, you're being brought up with your own, whatever it is that you brought to the table at that point in time, whoever spooked the hell out of you. Like that's, unfortunately, that's the path that you want to go down. But if you actually wanted to invest in yourself, mate, 3 hours of your time to listen to a few poddies, change your life, right? And change the whole trajectory of everything. So, I think I'm very passionate about. So,
on the education side, I'm going to throw a cat amongst the pigeons here. I'm going to let the two of you debate amongst yourselves. I don't even know if you're going to come up with a different point of view, but to start us off, Rentvesting, when you're first starting off, should you buy an owner-occupier or an investor? A bit of a debate that's going on at the moment. I'll let you two fight over it.
I think we would be on the same page as this goes. We both own PPORs, but we're at a different stage in our life. So, I'm 40, Hung is 60.
I was so surprised. I was wondering where you were going with this.
But when you are there's a season for Rentvesting. The season for Rentvesting is in your 20s, but for me, there is no greater store of wealth as a business owner than your PPOR. And also a lot of people that, spruik Rentvesting long-term, they don't have families. Not that having a family makes you any sort of difference in the world or in societal standing, but I think until you have kids or your own family, people don't realize the value there is in owning your own home. I think if you're starting out in your 20s, what I would tell my 20-year-old self is do not buy that house to live in. Start investing. That's how you're going to grow your wealth, Hung.
Yeah, look, I'd probably add some layers to that, which I believe Dawn would agree to, is that, depending on where you live, right? So let's give an example. If you are living in Melbourne right now, right? and you've got this 5% scheme. You have the ability to enter a market that hasn't done it much in quite some time, and you're able to live in a potential growth market, and you can get in with 5% no stamp duty, right? You'd be crazy not to take that up, you know?
I agree. And no CGT on your sale to
Correct.
roll into the next market.
So that's literally how I got into my first property. Was I went into the PPOR, the first home buyers grants. You know, they gave us, I think, 14,000 when I did my one. And that was City 2011, 2012, you know? So you look at that market, and by the time I'd settled my property, it'd gone up, you know, maybe $200,000 by the time, right? Yeah. So it was, you know, if you are living in a growth market, it's a different story. But let's just argue that you're living in Sydney now. And, you know, to buy something that you could live in at $600,000-$700,000, right? Because you look at the amount that you'll be earning at that time to get into your first property. Arguably, are you going to buy anything that's worth buying at that level, or could you outperform that with an investment property and substantially, right? So if you just look, I guess, at the raw metrics of both, the problem with the investment property is the amount of deposit that's going to be required. So your barrier to entry is how much you have to save. But there are other mechanisms. I think Dawn's spoken about this before. There's parental guarantees if you're fortunate enough to have a parent. You know, there are ways of paying less deposit but taking high interest rates temporarily. But, you know, you have to have a lot of education to be able to absorb that and understand that, you know, it's a short-term pain for long-term gain, right? So there's a lot of layers to it, and there's no one-size-fits-all. And if you're on the higher end of the spectrum, right? So let's talk about these guys who are now buying luxury properties with massive blocks of land, right? Land tax, for instance. You know, if you wanted to own something that, you know, if you bought as an investment, let's call it a $10 million asset for argument's sake, and we'll go on a whole other side of the spectrum. If you live in it, you don't have to pay land tax on it, right? The land tax on something like that will be phenomenal. And you're storing your wealth inside this block of land, right? So I'm a firm believer in PPORs, I'm a firm believer in investments, but everyone's circumstances are different.
I think it was listening to a conversation that you and I were having just about an hour ago, I mean, with the 5% deposit scheme, there is a bit of an element of luck as to where you're living, what market you're buying in at that time. You know, if you are in a growth pocket of Melbourne, it's a fantastic time to do it. But if you're looking at buying an apartment in Parramatta, and you go on realestate.com.au and you look at the oversupply and you look at what that apartment sold for 10 years ago, sometimes these apartments sold for more 10 years ago than they're selling for today. And you are putting yourself at huge risk if you are doing a 5% down, given that the risk of structural defects, like over 50% of new build big apartments in New South Wales have major defects. You're putting yourself at risk with huge maintenance costs in the future. So there is an element of, there's right in both answers. It just depends when and where. I'll also ask a question, because this is something that, you know, if you're scrolling through Instagram, if your Instagram feed looks like mine, I'm sure both of yours looks almost identical.
It's all cats.
It's all cars. It's all cats.
Cats in Ferraris.
The Rolexes, cats in Ferraris.
Cats in Ferraris.
Yeah, there's going to be a mark for that. About buying in trusts. I'm going to put the cat amongst the pigeons again. When should you start looking at structures, i.e. trusts and companies to buy in? Suppose not getting too technical, when is early too early?
Maybe I'll start with that one. Depending on how big you want to build this out and what your goals are, especially obviously when you're in your early 20s, you actually don't know how big that looks, because you know your lifestyle is going to change as you get older and older, right? But I feel with a lot of the lending changes at the moment, it's making it more and more hard to buy and trust, get the trusts profitable, get them quarantined. You know, it's a big topic at the moment. A lot of lending changes. You'd have to sell to reduce debt facilities in order to get there, or sell and then buy commercial property. But in saying that, if you are trying to build a substantial portfolio, in my eyes, the earlier the better, because you want to quarantine those earlier properties sometimes, right, and faster. So what happens if you keep buying in your individual name? Let's get to 4 or 5 properties now. Now we're stuck. We can't do anything unless we sell. So in the reverse side, you might have, you know, other investments or something you could sell off to reduce debt facilities in the trust to then allow that to quarantine, or you decide to sell one property, quarantine that, get back your individual borrowing power, which might be conserved for maybe a principal place of residence. You might want to set up a new trust to start building again. So the earlier the better if you want to go substantial on it. But at the same time, you don't know. right? You don't know how big you want to go until you get a lick. Once you get a lick, you're like, oh, okay, well, instead of 4 properties, I want to get to 10. And by that time, you're like, now I'm stuck. So, but you really got to work on your income then. So you got to figure out how to earn more money is then your next step. So there's no fixed and fast formula. I guess it's just having that conversation to understand the pros and cons of it, getting the professional advice from an accountant, and then also then talking to the broker or smart broker who understands how to make this work for you.
And that's the difference, talking to a broker who's actually built out an investment portfolio and started from the ground up like Hung has. So not all brokers are the same. I have clients come to me and, you know, trying to fix their mess and send them on to someone like Hung to help them when their properties are cross-collateralized or they've let them max out in their personal name, or it's sometimes it's just a disaster, and it's purely because the broker either doesn't have any investments or unfortunately they haven't learned the art of, you know, putting scaling a property portfolio, and it's so damaging to the clients. And we often every day, both of us would have to undo a lot of messes that come across our desk. But just going back to the trusts with you know, like let's say someone is holding an asset for 5 years, but that property could have doubled in 5 years and they're going to sell it anyway. Would they, with the changes that have happened in lending, are they going to be better off just buying more in their personal name and timing markets, or what do you think? I
think the core to people buying in trusts is more to try and quarantine them at some point and then be able to have options to when to sell and what, rather than being forced to sell in order to extend the portfolio out, I guess. So I think there's a lot of levers you can pull to quarantine it in a sense. So for instance, you might have a share portfolio, you might have made some money in crypto, I don't know. You could be earning more money and saving at a higher pace. And you know that you have these 4 properties, for instance, and 2 of them in a trust. And that trust, you need to reduce the debt level by 150,000. You figure out a way to get that 150 grand somehow to reduce that debt facility, rebuild that borrowing capacity and start again, right? But if you had it all in the individual name, well, no, we're forced to sell. We can't even actually pay down debt to get that borrowing capacity back. Yeah.
And that's a very and that's a clear point, which is I'm so glad that Hung said that, because a lot of our clients that come to us, they they really need that advice on when to get into trusts.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, and obviously, you know, it's more expensive. The big lenders are pulling out. There are some funders still cheap. You know, people aren't allowing this quarantine system to happen no more. So there's so many layers to it now, but there are funders that are there. Some of the funders are starting to rate up 1% higher than what the market rate is. But, you know, if you're buying a growth asset that's returning you 20% in year 1 and then compounding and getting you more growth, like 20% versus an extra 1%, I'd rather make the 19% every day of the week for sure.
And while they're there to make an option, and while trusts are still a thing from certain lenders for new customers, I would be trying to take advantage of that as much as possible.
Oh, 100%. It's still there, and you know, we're still doing it every day. But you know, it's obviously with a lot of caution, making sure that they know what they're in for, and make sure these trusts, when they are, you know, I guess taken away from borrowing capacity, that they are actually quarantined. You know, so everything's crossed off and the customer's safe.
I'd love to take the opportunity to go even simpler for a lot of our listeners, because I think it's like 70% of investors still just have the one property. 50% of investment properties are more or less positively geared. So there are a lot of people out there that haven't necessarily faced the conundrum of going through a trust or not. They might have just accumulated one, or through inheritance received a property and become, I suppose, an accidental investor in that sense. Couldn't we define quarantine, Hung, and go through some of those lending changes? I think it was Macquarie is pulled out of trust lending, just to give that overall view of what trust lending is from a really basic perspective. And then to yourself, Dawn, after that, looking through some of the real mistakes that people have had when their brokers haven't gone on an investing journey themselves and might have just told them yes to whatever they want to hear and actually put them in quite financially challenging situations. But we'll start off really basic, defining those elements of trust lending.
Very simply, the trust is basically an entity that holds the property, and the property is obviously going to receive rent and have expenses, maintenance, you name it, agent fees at the end of all costs. In order to no longer carry that as part of your borrowing capacity. So let's say you borrowed $1 million inside the trust. and you're able to generate enough rent to cover all of the expenses and generate a profit where the trust spits you out, a trust distribution at the end of the year. That's now what we deem quarantine. So that the lending facility for $1 million, if you had $1 million borrowing capacity and you already had $1 million in loans in that trust, but you managed to, build a granny flat, put a commercial property in there, get the yield up to 10%, and then get that trust to be quarantined, that means it's actually generating a profit. There's lenders who will no longer look at that as a liability. So you get back your $1 million borrowing power. That's probably the simplest way to explain it, right? Is that clear?
Yeah, no, that's a very simple way of putting it. Thank you. And to some of the people that you've seen, Dawn, that have come through and their brokers have just, said yes, they've ticked and flicked, they've given them whatever they wanted and they've come across in quite a precarious financial position. What does that actually look like and how has it hamstrung their ability to live their lives?
I have so many people that come to us for strategy sessions that they come to me pre-approved, they're ready to buy, and I say no. So I say, I think that, you need to talk to a broker who knows, the ins and outs of investing, because I don't just want to get you stuck at this one property. It's not going to meet your goals. One I've seen a lot recently is people over leveraging in super and having minimal buffers left. So I think that a lot of the time, either the broker is just listening to what the client wants to borrow and they only have 10 grand of a buffer left in their super. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable with this, because obviously when we do our own SMSF lending personally, and that's the benefit of, you have to use people who've actually done or are doing what you want to do. I'll say, I need you to go back to that broker. I don't think it's, safe for you to borrow 600,000. You need to go back and have more of a buffer left in your super. Do you see that a lot, Hung?
Yeah, we do. And I think the conversation flows on to, look, how are you going to manage this, right? And if they're going to keep contributing the extra contributions for the next 6, 12, 18 months, is that a real thing? So you kind of want to see that they've got that habit already. A very easy indication of them kind of having issues is that they've got no money in their personal life left over, and they're trying to bash out, property in super when they've got nothing left here. How can they contribute extra? And if we're relying on that, then that's a big issue. So you want to have a bigger buffer, of course. They have all these written rules and people make up, I say sometimes, but the suggestion is 10% liquidity. So if you bought a 500 grand asset, for instance, the suggestion is you have at least 50 grand buffer, so that's what they suggest. But, it's quite heavy on a 500 grand property. At the same time, things can go wrong if you haven't got the right insurances, for instance, and you got to make sure that you've got the contents covered. You've kind of ticked every single box because it is your super, it is your future. You got to make sure that you've actually looked at all of the variables rather than just jumping at it, and make that informed decision to go, hey, I'm comfortable. Let's press play,
And a lot of the time people don't even ask them like what their plans are in their life. So this particular couple, they have a young child and they're planning to have another baby. So then, the wife is going to go on mat leave. So, and then it's a lot of pressure on the household. So I think it's our job as professionals to really explore with people, not only where they're at today, but what their plans are for the next year, 2 years, to try and protect them. It's not about just like, getting them like approved or getting them a property. It's like, is this the right time for them?
Yeah, I'll probably add a quick layer to that one too, because it's all well and good to say, go to a barbecue, say I own 2 properties in my super fund. It's pretty to say, hey, I own 2 high density apartments in my super fund, right? So if they have 2 future-proof properties in their super fund, I'll be very,
We
very
got it in there. We got
very
it in there.
stoked.
Well,
very
how many future-proof properties do you have, Hung?
I've got a couple. Got a couple. We'll get. I want to go into that a bit later. So we'll wind up the potty with a bit of that. So
one of the main concerns is that people have bought property through their super without giving due consideration to whether the super fund is actually able to look after them, and then you've got to top it up with money ahead of time, leaving you cash poor in the immediate short term.
Not even that. It's just that with super, you have such a chance to take your wealth to the next level. And again, this isn't financial advice. This is just what we do personally. And when you time markets in super, you're talking about a CGT that you only have to pay 10% when you sell your asset. So history will show us that a lot of markets double in a 5-year window. So you want to take as much advantage of that as possible to make the most amount of gains in the shortest amount of time. If you're buying in your super in Brisbane now, I would say to you, why? You're buying there because you've been validated by the fact that it's grown 120%. But switch that on its head, you've missed 120% of that growth. And so what are you expecting it to do? Some miracle that it's going to keep growing at that rate? Affordability becomes a constraint.
Yeah, I'm starting to look at the Brisbane yields now, and I'm starting to see people pick up stock at like, 2s and 3s, and I'm like, whoa, this is heavy. Interest rates and super fund are a bit more expensive, for instance. So you're ranging between 6 and 7, right? So then you got a gap of 4% plus, call it management fees and everything else. It's actually costing you 5% a year to hold that property, right? So you get 5% on $1 million. You go, holy crap, it's cost me 50 grand a year to hold this property, and they're buying these like, $1 million properties, right? And it's costing you that, and you're going, well, are you actually going to outperform that in any way? It's hard to say. Like,
and 5 years ago, those $1 million properties were probably 600,000.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But you're both quite strong advocates of buying through an SMSF to ensure that you have financial flexibility upon retirement, and in particular for people that might not have a deposit to buy now in the immediate short term. Do you work with clients that don't necessarily have the capital on them for a deposit right now that you can support through property acquisition, their SMSF?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's the right thing for them. And again, like none of this, because, as a buyer's agent, you're not licensed to give any sort of financial advice. Whenever I'm talking about anything, it's always from a personal point of view. And we would always refer to a broker or accountant or, a financial advisor on that. But for us, when we learned in super and the CGT being at 10%, that was the biggest game changer for us when we modeled that out. So I'm 40 now. When we modeled that out of being able to ride 4 different growth cycles in that period by the time we reach preservation age. I hate they call it preservation age.
Preservation age.
That's an absolute game changer for your finances if you know what you're doing. Like, you can have millions in your super, right?
Oh, until Labor government keeps playing with it, but
The unrealized.
Yeah.
Well, do we expect then, and this might be a more philosophical thing looking in the crystal ball, but do we expect that tax on unrealized gains is forgotten?
Look, anything can change at any given time. At the moment, there's a lot of perks of buying in your super fund. I'm kind of relating back to Dawn, what she just said there. One powerful thing I've noticed, especially this is for the everyday guy who's really struggling to save a deposit for their first property. In the deposit that they have might only get them to a PPOR, which doesn't suit their needs. But they've built up their deposit in their super fund, right? They've got a deposit for their first property there. They got to get the advice, obviously, get it signed off, but be careful who you pick as well, because there's going to be accountants, there's going to be financial planners who don't own any property themselves or aren't advocates of property in a sense. And then even if you get that advice, the vehicle you choose in that super fund is so important, right? You buy one shit asset, everything's shit, right?
Yeah,
you buy one good asset, the whole world changes. And, the amount of research, the amount of, I guess, data points that go into what somebody like Dawn would buy is what you need in order to get the right vehicle to then set up your SMSF. I wouldn't tell everyone to get the SMSF. Obviously, it's not our job in the sense to say, hey, go and set up SMSF. You got to be able to self-manage for a reason, right? You got to get the knowledge. You got to understand what you're doing. But I just have to iterate how important that first asset or vehicle is. Like in anything, it's like a clone of yourself, right? You got your real world, which is your individual world, and then the super fund has its own borrowing capacity, its own world that doesn't actually correlate in some instances. If you need more borrowing power, then they'll look at your personal life. That's a bit different. But you usually don't want to stretch that far anyway in the super environment. You kind of want to just play within the boundaries. But some people are getting super aggressive in there also, which can be okay if you know what you're doing.
Dawn, you mentioned earlier about people that would be buying in Brisbane. You're like, well, what are you doing? You kind of missed out on it. Take us through timing the market and why this is so important, especially in someone's earlier investing journey. I'm going to guess there's a lot of people that are still listening to this podcast that, they're not up to the day-to-day analytics and the day-to-day data. And, you famously always say that, data is kind of old when it comes out because it's already been published. It's not what's immediately happening on the ground now. And property data, we all know, is about 3 months old now anyway, by the time it comes out. So I think there would still be a lot of that residual FOMO that people have had. They're trying to get on the last elements of growth. How important is timing the market? Is it very common that people are still just trying to grab onto the last dregs of growth?
timing the market is critical, and even more so today in an environment where we're yield compressed and where wages are not keeping up with house price growth, because it's going to cost you to hold an asset. Okay, so what I want people to focus on is how can you help ensure your property is going to grow in the shortest amount of time, where your time frame of those holding costs is diluted against that. Because let's say in Melbourne, it costs money to hold houses in Melbourne. Like, it's not cheap to hold houses in Melbourne, but pound for pound, it's the most undervalued market in the country today. So you want to time the market, because if you look at across Australia and you follow pattern recognition, markets double in a 3, 5, 6 year window. Why do they do that? When it's affordable for the local demographic. I don't want you looking at assets from Sydney going, oh, this seems cheap to me. It mightn't be cheap for the local demographic. I want you guys to focus on that and focus on areas that are supply constrained, because any of the assets that we've bought personally, you're buying in assets that are 500,000 that are now 850 and so on. The story continues. And all of that has happened in a 4 to 5 year window. You want to try and fast track your success, and you can do that through timing markets.
Why are yields so low in Melbourne?
Historically, I would say that it's to do with the fact that Melbourne has a population of 5.4 million people. Over the next 10 years, it's going to increase by 1 million people. You just have more of a choice of areas for people to live in, and it's more of a spread out city geographically. You look at Sydney, it's hemmed in by, beautiful beaches, and you've got the mountains. Same with other areas. Melbourne is flat as far as the eye can see. But with Melbourne, we haven't really had that rental growth as yet, because I think that there's just, what we're going to see is there is going to be some rental growth because you have a lack of supply and there is a lack of building happening. I think that rental growth will come because investors are going to be priced out of Melbourne quicker than they realise. And then the owner-occupiers will take over, and they'll all wish they bought in Melbourne 6 months ago.
Yeah, I'll probably add a layer to that is if you just look at the history of Melbourne from lockdown to today, right, and what's happened to their property market, they've been losing population year on year after COVID, right? Everybody was going to the East Coast, they were going to WA, they just wanted to get the hell out of Melbourne after, then Dan Andrews came in, then we got land tax reforms, and then they've just been getting hit. And then every investor, they had to, update all their properties, and there was just a lot happening in that span since COVID till now. And I think I was looking at some of the data sets, and it was like they were losing population, like substantially losing population. And I think it was just the last, I think it's maybe 18 months now. Now they're in a surplus, right? And their forecast for surplus over the next few years is phenomenal. Like, they've got this surplus that's coming, but they haven't started building anything.
In terms of population
growth.
In terms of population growth. So the forecast for the rental market, as well as obviously demand for buying owner-occupiers, it's huge. Like, you look at the next, not to put the crystal ball out there, but, they're forecasting Melbourne to outpace population of Sydney at some point, right? All the demographers out there showing the graph going, Melbourne, so it's there's always somewhere to invest in. And if you can absorb the shit yields and you can absorb the land tax that's going on there, it's a very good early market to be in, or you could just go straight to somewhere else that's already growing, but there's a lot of different markets that are happening at this point in time. If you look at the WA market, it's still running like a bull. They just spent a crap load of money on more infrastructure, billions and billions of dollars in project. What happens with all that stamp duty? It gets spent. So they want to keep people there. They don't want to lose the population. So they go, look, let's just spend it all. So
yeah, I think people waiting for the market to crash in Australia are going to be waiting. Unfortunately, I think that more and more people are going to, notice house prices growing at an extraordinary rate in certain markets.
It's crazy in Victoria. Like, actually, Dawn bought one for me that was in. She ticked all the boxes that I was looking for something. That I wanted to personally buy in Melbourne, and I wanted something that was still metro. I didn't want to go too far. I do like the regional markets too, don't get me wrong, but I'm a metro guy because I have the ability to afford the metro with the lower yields. When go out to the regional markets, you get slightly higher yields. I was okay to absorb that loss because I know that these rents will go up eventually. But $630 was one property.
$630, yeah.
Yeah, we paid $630 for a house that's on about 600 square meters brick. And the other one was $680. So the $680K one was actually better because I'll tell you something funny. I don't think I've ever said this to Dawn, but when we bought that property, I just looked at it like for 2 seconds. I was like, yep, looks good. Brick house, land value is probably about 600 grand. And we've got a 3-bedroom brick house on this. But then the walkthrough video was even funnier because they had all like, they're like, yeah, we're just painting,
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if Dawn even knows this, but they were renovating. So new kitchen, new bathroom, new toilets. I'm like, man, they just spent like, if I was to do the job, it would be like 50 grand in renos, right? I didn't even know I was getting the reno. So it was like getting a free reno.
They threw it in.
Yeah. No, it was already happening.
Yeah.
I didn't know the reno was happening. I bought it based on face value of land
But
and bricks.
because he bought it off of the land, but we knew all this renovations was happening, so we could see the value that was happening for Hung. And we're talking about 2 Metro Melbourne assets for a 630 and 680, like in Hoppers and Werribee, and they're just fantastic markets that I think Hung's going to be very happy in the next 5 years with those properties.
So what are some of the deals that you've worked on together, and noting that some of our listeners probably don't know Melbourne too well. So if we could, what were the deals, those price points again, and give an example for where those suburbs lie?
I think what the action point people really need to take away from this is Hung is a very successful investor with a successful business, but he sees the value in buying properties at the bottom of the cycle at that 600K price point because they have the greater propensity to double. So Hung isn't going into this market, into the middle rings, buying for 1.2 million when he has every capacity to do that. He sees the value and the value in those markets, and he's not scared by those yields.
Yeah, so I think the brief with Dawn, I was actually, obviously I'm quite open. I work with a lot of buyers agents, of course, around the country. I wanted to get into the Melbourne market. I didn't have anything there at the time. And I just knew, and I kept saying to Dawn, I really like Frankston, because it reminds me of like the northern beaches of Sydney or something. And then I started talking to different buyers agents, and they started sending me Frankston stuff, and I was like, man, this is like 70K above asking price. And every time I was like, am I priced out of Frankston? Yeah. I was like looking and going, man, we're going up to 900s. And sure enough, then I was like, I've obviously listened to what Dawn represents, and obviously being a Melbourne local, I was like, I think we're the right fit for this, to pick up a couple of Melbourne deals. So as that kind of eventuated, we started off in the Frankston area. We got a property, and when we got to Peston Building, the property had some problems in the roof. There's no way you could have seen that through the walkthrough. Impossible, right? So the house structurally was not sound. So I had to pull out of this Frankston deal, which was a bit sad. And it was a good deal, off market, everything stacked up. It was perfect for the deal I wanted. It was a bit more on the higher price point, getting towards the 800 point. But then the Peston Building came through, and obviously it was, and then we then had to kind of visit our conversation, which was fantastic because then Dawn's like, what do you want out of this? I'm like, I actually don't want to sit there. The yields are going to be crap in Melbourne for the next 7 years, right? So I really want to buy a property which I could then sell if I had to in the next 5, 6, 7 years, because I know to exit within a certain period. So what does that look like? I need a property that's going to be very attractive to an owner-occupier, has really high intrinsic value, and we're kind of buying at the bottom or close to the bottom of the cycle, because the market did run over the last couple of years in Melbourne. Not aggressively, but it did run. And yeah, she opened me up to these other markets, which I'm like, I just didn't even think about. I'm like, look, who cares where it is? So that's what it came down to. And we're like, I'm probably going to sell these, but if the rents run with the population growth, I might not want to sell them. I want the option to be able to sell, not sell, hold forever if I have to.
And already, like, these kind of properties are like, they've grown a lot in that time frame.
Yeah, I think I revalued one of them. It's been, I don't know, how long's it been, mate? 7 months, maybe, something like that. Probably about 100 and something grand on each property already. So they're already performing really well.
Yeah. And that's in like that time frame. And this is where I want people to, because you might see a lot of stuff online, people bagging out certain suburbs, but they don't understand the intrinsic value and what that value is to people who are moving to the area as well. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, you're pretty famous for an online debate that you had about blue chip versus blue collar, and what's a better investment. Do you want to give us some background into that debate?
Oh, it's not even a debate, and Hung will know this. Like, and we're just like very like honest, people. And I think that, you know,
What do we
Jack
do?
is a great business.
Call a spade, right?
Yeah,
When
we
you
call
see
a
something,
spade. We call
yeah,
a spade
yeah.
a spade. And
Yeah.
like, you know, like all props to Jack, and I'm all for like supporting business owners, and like he does a great job. I just think when somebody is so not open to any other style of investing, it always just makes me think, well, why? Why are you so focused on this style? Is it for the client or is it for someone's business? That goes for every business owner in Australia. So we're all running businesses. So what I would say is that there's an opportunity cost to holding something for 30 years and how much it's going to cost you to hold that asset versus like the investing style that Hung and I and a lot of other people we know, we time markets. I don't want to spend 200K on a granny flat or to force equity. I just want the market to lift the thing. I'm too busy to think about all of that stuff. Like,
Yeah, this is the thing also, and especially with granny flat deals, for instance, it often freezes you. So when you, for instance, you're in the middle of construction, right? So now another lender that you need might be a second tier lender. They won't consider any of the rent from that property because it's mid construction. So you're getting a lot of like frozen points where you actually can't progress, and you stress out because you're in the middle of these, you know, this construction. You're going to have to go sign another deed of variation because something went up. And so people get really stressed out in that period and like, look, I just do one thing at a time. But imagine just like, I've done nearly everything in property now. I kid you not. I think obviously people who've listened to the show, they know what bits.
You've done the construction,
yeah,
you've done the
development, I've bought
Yeah.
hotels, I've done, you know, I've done the buy and hold, like literally everything, every piece of property I've touched, right? And it came down to it. I went back to the bare bone basics. Just buy a good asset and let the market do the heavy lifting for you. And then go buy another good asset, let the market do the heavy lifting for you. And then people always try to complicate it because we always talk about this, but they want to go to the barbecue. Oh, I've got this place in Point Piper, you know, whatever it is. You know, you just want to show off what, like, who gives At the end of the day, you want freedom. Well, what are you doing this for? Like, you want to do it for your family? Like, do you want to do it for yourself? Do you want to go, you know, traveling? Whatever it is, freedom is a big word, right? You do it for that reason.
freedom of time. There's a lot of like flexing out there, and there's a lot of like ego. And the problem I have with the blue chip investing style is that there's a lot of talk about, oh yeah, but you have to look back at 30 years, and it's like listening to a crypto bro. It's like, oh yeah, but mate, like there's a time when that market does nothing and you're holding that asset. The opportunity cost could be millions.
What does Dawn always say? She's like, you're holding the baby.
This is the pull-out method, you know what I mean? So, you know, but yeah, like it's just whatever strategy works for you. But I think that we all just need to learn to be open to learning and to, you know, that there's all sorts of different strategies.
I'll probably just add some flavor to that last piece. So, I thought we put that one in there because I think it was like yesterday morning I saw Dawn do a post about, you know, a hole that you wouldn't buy in, and I was like, well, look at the hole and look how much it's performed over the last 3 to 4 years. I think it was Townsville they were talking about, and the fundamentals of Townsville and what it represented during that period, it's incredible, right? So anyone who invested there knows exactly what they got out of it,
solid
right?
gold shithole.
Oh, a solid gold hole. I think there was another one. It was like a couple of WA places, and I actually look back at these videos that were posted 2 years ago. Man, you've picked the best performing markets to call a hole. Across 3 or 4 videos, I was like, every single one of those markets have gone 100% within 3 years. I'm like, Jesus Christ. If you could have picked a worse place to call a hole, because anyone who invested there made so much money. Imagine you bought 10 properties. You bought one great property in let's say, Paddington for $5 million, right? You bought a $5 million property in Paddington, and it cost you $300,000 a year to hold that property, plus land tax, plus whatever it was. Or you bought 10 in the hole at $500,000 a pop, or no, sorry, more than that, 14, 15 at $400,000 a pop or whatever it was, and it costs you nothing to hold it because the rents are going up, the values are going up. You compare those two, Jesus Christ! Like what was the outcome after 3 years?
So who's winning the blue collar versus blue chip argument? Now I'm gonna
I don't even think it's blue collar versus blue chip. I think it's like literally timing markets.
Yeah.
I don't care like where it is, as long as the fundamentals stack up short term and long term. But I would also say to the fact that it's just the opportunity cost. I think the opportunity cost and I think it comes down to ego, and it comes down to people being ashamed to say that they own an asset in Townsville, because you're literally calling something a hole based on your perception. And I think that's a dumb way to look at life and investing. I think your ego is costing you millions of dollars.
That's a great point. So let's just 1 second go apples for apples, right? If you bought $5 million worth of property in, say, the eastern suburbs of Sydney, or you spent the exact $5 million in Townsville in that same time 3 years ago, right? Let's look at today's outcome and where that would be. Let's just assume that 5 million in Townsville went to 8 million, 9 million, because that's probably the gentle side of where it performed over the last 3 years. That place in Paddington, depending on how you bought, if you bought well, whatever, the best you might be a million growth because you bought well. If you overpaid, then you might have made nothing in the last 3 years, right? Or you might actually gone backwards. So depending on the pure asset that you picked, right? It's very...
And how much did it cost you to hold that
whole
Paddington
cost.
property?
Yeah. So these properties here will be positively geared. And then now we're talking about opportunity costs, which Dawn was saying, right? Now you've got this positive. You could sell. You've got, say, 15 properties there. You could sell 5, fog it off, reduce some debt, re-leverage, and go into a new market like Melbourne, for instance. And now all of a sudden, you're getting this snowball effect. You've got all of these things just working for you, right? And then it's just snowballing. And then now you're playing it like a business. You might have a lot more to manage, sure. But you are now manufacturing yourself an incredible amount of life-changing wealth.
Yeah, there's no need to flex for people that aren't going to give, like, I don't know anybody who values someone's worth on whether they own, a house in, Townsville, or whether they own something in bloody Point Piper. I couldn't give as long as they're like a good person. And that's what I love, like, about even like, it always reminds me of like my nana when we upgraded our PPOR. She says, what was wrong with the other house? And my nana, like this woman, like, she can't read or write. She was out cleaning houses at 12. I would like go cleaning like hairdressing salons with her, like when she was like 60. She was still cleaning. She was just like, she is an amazing woman, but she's always just like taught me that no matter where somebody comes from or who they are, you just treat everybody the same. So I think this elitist attitude to investing is not only costing these people millions of dollars, it's also way to go through life with that attitude as well, is my take.
Yeah, I think before the show, Dawn, I was just having a brief chat about styles of investing, and I think I was making the point of I know a lot of wealthy people out there, and a lot of normal people, and I guess I walk with every single walk of life. Obviously, started in this country as refugees, so there's no difference to me on whether you're wealthy or not wealthy. We want to help everyone to get to the next level. But in the style of investing, if we're just going into these, we're just talking about if you went into this just hardcore blue chip thing, when are you ever going to see some light? And literally your lifestyle is jeopardized. And I was talking about how I personally just keep following the same pattern, just hitting that, affordable housing, high intrinsic value. Just rinse and repeat the same thing. And it was the best style of investing I ever came across. And that was like the Da Vinci Code for me. And I think Dawn realized the same thing when she was going through her journey, in the first few properties, and it just kept accelerating. That snowball effect just kept happening. And as we are now. So.
And with that, you have a little bit more flexibility in where you're buying, but also the asset classes, Dawn, that you're willing to get into. I know you and I have spoken at length about the potential growth for units, the potential growth for townhouses as well. So once an investor has chosen their growth market, how important is asset selection in that market? And what are some things that investors are overlooking at the moment?
I think it's just budget dependent. I think if somebody has a budget of $550 and less, I don't want to see them in some fibro shack in Tasmania that's being boosted by every locust investor out there pushing up the price of it. I'd prefer to see them in a high socioeconomic unit where there's a real disparity with the house prices. So we were purchasing units in Geelong West for $440,000. The houses in that area are $1.2 million. And these are brick, low density, 1 of 4 or 1 of 2. And they have good yields. So if you're starting out as an investor, I don't want them to have to worry about maintenance. And they can hold this asset long term as well as short term if they so choose. So and again, I'm open to learning. I wasn't big on units, last year, and it was probably an opportunity cost in Brisbane or in Perth. But I'm always open to learning and realizing that buyers change, markets change. And I think to be a smart, astute investor, you have to be open to every opportunity at different stages of not only the market cycle, but the credit cycle. We're entering a credit cycle now where there is going to be opportunity in units and townhouses across this country. And I think you're silly if you're blinding yourself to not buying units.
And that's funny that we brought that one up, because Dawn and I were on the phone, I think a few days ago, actually talking about it. And I brought that point up to her. I said, I'm looking at units every day, Dawn. Are you looking at units?
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah, I'm buying them.
Yeah, I'm like, I never look at units, but man, the gap is incredible. Like, it's just so big. And even in Sydney, for instance, right? There's I know some of the BAs even that come on this show, they're all buying blocks of them, right? Because they're getting really good value. They probably run out of borrowing capacity, and it's treated like a commercial loan. So you're seeing this opportunity just in unit blocks as wholes, but individual units even. Like I think we spoke about on the last episode, stuff that I'm seeing on the low to medium rise density code, where you can buy singular units without having even factored that the unit block can go up to 8 stories now and still sitting on 2 with a big parcel of land in Sydney. It's crazy, right? I was about to buy one myself at 445k in Auburn, and sure enough, when the first home buyers grant came out, I didn't buy it. I lost about like $2,000 or whatever it was. And then as soon as the first home buyers grant came out, somebody snapped it up, and it's now I guess the like for like property is 100,000 higher. Yeah. So you're starting to see that flow through effect of the LMR. Starting to see the flow through effect of all the guys who are on the 5% scheme. So there's a lot of movement in there. I want to be buying in a high density block. Obviously, this was like a block of 6 units on a big parcel of land sitting on the yellow code called the low to medium rise density code. So if you've never checked it out, guys, it's probably some food for thought. Just Google low medium rise density code New South Wales, and there's literally a map there. You might not even know that you're on the map, right? So it means you can transform properties from 2 stories, 3 stories to 8 stories if it's going to be high rise units, not high rise, medium rise, sorry. Medium rise units, and there's opportunity for manor housing, townhouses. You can build instead of a duplex, you can go tri or quadplexes now on site. So there's so much opportunity there, and you don't have to build it. You can buy it and sit on it. Let someone else build it later, but you got upside.
Buy it, and exactly do the DA and then sell it later.
With the current cycle of credit, as you highlighted, Dawn, are investors looking for cash flow and low interest rates more now? Is it important, or is it going back to the basics of capital growth that we should be prioritizing?
I think that capital growth is the only thing that's going to get them freedom of choice to move into commercial assets later. I've been very strong that they cannot retire from residential real estate cash flow if they're starting today. If you're starting in 2026, you need to have a growth-focused mindset to help you be able to transition to cash flow assets later, because if you buy on gross yield alone, and a lot of them will buy 5.5%, 6% yield assets, but that's gross. They haven't factored in some of their, their council rates, their insurance costs, and maintenance cost. A lot of these cheaper assets are really deferred maintenance. I want to see people focus on opportunities in areas where houses are, 600, 650, 800, where it's higher socioeconomic and it has a propensity to double. I don't just want people to make 200K off an asset. I want that 600K property to go to $1 million and have other levers people can pull. Whether it's it grows to $1 million, they do a DA on it for townhouses and then sell it. There's so many levers I want people to be able to pull in an asset. Also, we're entering a stage of the market where people can force equity too, through cosmetic renovations and different things like that. I think you just have to be adaptable to the market timing we're in.
To add to that, I guess, Dawn did purchase that 680 property she purchased when he was on, I think it's 680 squares on a corner block. And I actually just kind of mentioned to her, I wouldn't mind having a duplex site just for the reason that I could either DA it, I could actually eventually build it myself, because I might have a tax problem, want to get some depreciation. Construction might be cheaper. By the time I want to sell it in 8-9 years, they might start letting me, just do Lego blocks there or something, where you can just 3D print it, who knows. But I'd like an asset that gives me a few levers also. So that gives me levers. The corner block gives, 2 different street accesses, has a lot of opportunity to do something in the future. At 680K, you told me you can find something in Melbourne, second biggest city in Australia, within 22 Ks of the CBD. That's a duplex site. it's insane, right? So good value there at the moment.
That doesn't have any like building approvals, has 0.2% building approvals, and is totally landlocked as well. Like pound for pound, you're not going to find better value anywhere in the country, I think, for that.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
And it's not that price now.
And I'm sure we're only a few years away from having a Bunnings prefab duplex that will be coming out anyway. So.
Just roll it in with your ute, come out of the house, put some water on it.
Now, Dawn, you don't hide away from offering your insights into correctly priced or potentially underpriced postcodes in area future growth markets. Now, even with the latest rate rise, even with risks of capital gains, we're a bit, and you and I have spoken about this at length, but we're very much nothing to see here. The market will do what the market does. But with the market today, what states, what areas, what postcodes do you expect to see the most growth over the next 5 years?
I think that the most growth that people are going to see this year is in obviously hot spots, like your Darwins, your Perths, your Brisbanes. But at some point that it's going to become unaffordable for people to continue buy there, especially investors. So I think we're about 6 months away from seeing the hard move en masse to Melbourne. They're going to need more validation. It's going to have to be something that sparks the sentiment. But those of us that have been in the market early are going to reap all of those rewards because they've been able to look beyond the headlines. We've got a state election in November. All bets are off for that. But also when it's still the most affordable market, once people have finished in their Tasmanias and their everything, they're going to come back to Melbourne en masse.
Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's definitely some hot markets at the moment, and they're still rolling. When does WA stop the steamroll? I don't know. It's just
it'll keep going.
It'll keep going. Yeah, like I think they're negative 40,000 homes required per annum. I think I put in ChatGPT the other day just to see what ChatGPT said. I kind of have an idea, but data's from everywhere, right? Like no data's really that accurate. And they were saying, yeah, look, the forecast is negative 40 something thousand for the foreseeable future. Like
that's correct.
Yeah, like there's nothing to fill that gap for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So I've noticed that like I've got a fair few properties there and I'm still holding them. I don't know when to let go of them because it just keeps going. There's nothing telling me to let go at this point in time. So I keep looking at it going, okay, do I hold? Do I sell? I'd only ever really sell if there's a opportunity that's going to present because the yields have pushed so hard there that now I'm positively geared on every single property. It's like, well, do I really care to sell? It doesn't bother me. Makes me profit. I don't care to make. If I make $1 profit, mate, you're over the moon, right?
Yeah.
Because you're buying for growth, and if the growth is still running and you're making a profit, man, that's just a free ride.
Why rock the boat?
Yeah,
exactly. But like Hung timed his entry into that market as well. So, and that's the thing we keep coming back to outperform. You need to time the market.
So, Metro Melbourne.
Metro Melbourne, Geelong, we're looking at Canberra as well. Outside of Newcastle, Maitland. What are you seeing come across your desk a lot?
Like pretty much everything you're talking about, to be honest. Like, but they're not coming in masses, right? So
yes, but that's the thing. We like to be
early
early
markets.
guys.
Before everyone starts talking about it on podcasts.
You're definitely early
So
markets.
this is actually the first podcast. It's been we're soft.
I like Canberra.
We're soft launching hotspots. Is that what we're doing?
Soft launching. Yes.
Canberra's an interesting one. Actually, it's starting to pop up. And
I like
I'm seeing a bit of action going on there. So I haven't done my personal research into it because I was never fully drawn to Canberra. I always just thought,
Neither.
Well, I think
I've visited there and it's
you
actually
and
all
I-
right.
You and I
It's
spoke
awesome.
about
It's
it.
awesome.
I think it comes down to very safe, quite high-paying jobs and no
They
supply.
earn a shitload of money there.
Yeah, they do. Like, really do. I know a few people in APS. Actually, no, I don't know them. Friends of friends, so I'm happy to throw them under the bus on a podcast. But they earn enough money that they get like with overtime, they get to bank their overtime for extra holidays, and they forewent on a promotion because that promotion would mean that they can't like full bank their extra hour a day for extra holidays. They're pretty content.
Yeah. No, I look after heaps of clients in Canberra, funny enough, and it's an interesting place because also there's pockets or price points of commercial property that has no stamp duty to enter, right? So
the commercial property there looks really good.
quite lucrative there also because I can't remember the dollar price was 1.5 mil or whatever it is, but anything under that, there's no stamp duty. So the barrier to entry is, but then it's almost priced into the price. So you've got this kind of, thing that's going on there. But yeah, very lucrative market. Starting to see it really come in. And the last time when it steamrolled, it went bonanzas, right? So you're kind of right at the beginning of another cycle almost by the looks
It's
of it.
right at the bottom of its cycle as well.
Which is exciting. Obviously you've got the very, very lucrative Darwin market, which,
Correct.
I wouldn't put that into, I guess, depending on how you look at it, it's an interesting one because it's kind of being, the yields are so high there. There's a lot of infrastructure spend. There's a few things happening on the floor that's allowing the price to grow, but long term, whether you gonna hold the baby or not, it's gonna be a question. It's got a lot of legs for a particular investor, not made for your faint-hearted, put it that way.
So when is it the right time to sell, or are we buying and holding forever? I'll throw it to the floor.
I'll probably start on that one then. I think we've spoken about this multiple times, and if you've got a good asset that's future-proof in a sense, that has the fundamentals to be able to keep growing.
That's good.
Got in twice.
Yep.
Got in twice. And it can just keep growing, right? Because the demand is always going to be there. It's landlocked. It's got all of the features that it's going to allow it to keep growing, not just for the next 2 or 3 years. Then it's pretty hard to sell that asset, right? Because it's going to keep compounding the growth, even if it gets 20% and 15% and 10% and 5. You're now getting 5% after it's grown a ridiculous amount, which brings it to the double digits for your original purchase price. And if the rents keep going up in those areas, like it's pretty hard to sell. So I would only ever tell someone to sell, or not tell them to sell, but give them the option to sell.
He was like, sell.
Now.
Yeah.
Well, the option, if I was going to tell myself, I guess, and go, hey, the option to sell is, there's 2 factors for me is, is there a better opportunity elsewhere, right? So if you're only getting out of the market because you're able to sell one to then put you into more exposure into a new growth market or a better market. I've had times when I regret so much that I didn't sell an asset, which I should have sold, and I sat it there and it made no growth for the next 4 years. And I knew at that time there wasn't much more in the tank. There was nothing pushing it. It's hit above intrinsic value. I saw the intrinsic value sitting at 1 million. I could have got an offer at 1.15 on that property. And if I sold it today, guess what? I'll get probably 1.1 today. So I'm looking at that property going, that was 4 years ago. I should have just let the thing go. I would have made the money. I would have pumped that into a couple more WA properties, and I would have probably made 50x on what it's made nothing. So
That's what makes you a better investor, is because and such the best person to give the advice to people that are starting out, because you've gone through that pain, and that's obviously something I know you share with your team as well. So as you can help investors that are coming to not make those mistakes. And that's why I always say to Melissa, we're looking at our clients' portfolios. I'm like, these bastards have better portfolios than we do, because they get to not have made the mistakes. I would have loved to have someone like me when I was 20, and that's all I want to be for people out there, is to actually just try and give them that advice. Because I'm like, because they come to me and they're like, I want to develop, I want to do this, and I'm like, no, you don't. I'm like, please. I'm like, you're not a developer.
Don't do
I said,
it.
don't do it. Just
you should ask
buy
them,
assets.
do you like to sleep?
Yeah. Or do you like to make money? Or maybe I should just light some $50 notes in front of them.
How about making money and sleeping?
Yes.
Whoa.
And actually enjoying your family life, because life is short. And I always love listening to you talk about that as well, Hung, because of your beginnings and where you come from. I think it just gives you such a unique insight into what's important in life as well, because everyone knows you like nice cars and you deserve them because you've worked so freaking hard to get that. But there's so much to life, and giving back and helping people.
You know what's funny about the car? It wasn't actually I bought the car after a milestone. There was a certain milestone I had in my mind. And for some reason in my mind, I go, I'm going to buy the car if I've done X amount of things. But you know what? When I bought the car, I actually sold a property. That's literally, I go, I'm going to reward myself at this point in time. It turned over a $1.7 million profit, and I'm just like, just buy a car. What am I going to do with the cash? I'm like, it's, just, that was the kind of reward at the end of it. So it's people think about the supercars how the hell am I ever going to afford it? If you build a really good portfolio, I know it sounds crazy, but it's at some point you might sell a few properties and then you don't need the money, and then you've got that excess, and you go,
Then
well, now I can spoil myself a little bit.
And I think that's like if you're a business owner. I think like, you know, for the you know what I mean, for the person out there who isn't a business owner, like maybe that would have been better off paying off their mortgage.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah,
it's all relative.
It's all relative
where,
to the time
where you're at.
For me, fortunately, at that time, obviously, I had no non-deductible debt. It was a kind of a period where the house was paid off already.
Yeah.
And the house was paid off from the sale of other properties as well. So, you know, that's where the selling, we're going back to the selling. Like there was time, and I've almost timed the selling after that almost perfectly, nearly every single sale now. Whether it was a fact of, you know, having a crystal ball, no. It was just looking at all the information that was at hand and going, well, how can this property be worth any more than this in the near future? And all of the sales then almost sold at the peak on each of those properties.
And the key to what Hung was saying there as well is what we've talked about in using the investments to pay down that non-tax deductible debt and get rid of your mortgage. It's going to give you so much freedom, but you need the restraint to not keep upgrading your mortgage. That's the thing. Don't keep upgrading your PPOR.
Right, there's some amount I could have upgraded multiple times, and I chose not
don't.
to. And then, you know, I'm like, is a bigger house going to make you that much happier? No. I was like, you know, are there certain things about the PPOI that, like moving to a better suburb, is that going to make me happier? No. So certain factors, it might give you 1% more joy for 99% more pain. So you're going to be very, very weary about what it represents, right? Can I just drive an extra 5 minutes to get the kids to school, whatever it is? Like, yeah, right. Or do I want to spend and pay another $2 million mortgage? Which option do I want, right?
So on this note, $700,000 falls into the lap of Dawn Fouhy, and you've got 4 choices: Metro Melbourne, Geelong, Bendigo, or Ballarat. Which one do we choose, and what?
It all depends on the investor and their biases. So a lot of people come with preconceived biases. They don't want to invest in west of Melbourne because they heard someone chatting about it.
About machete wars.
Yeah, chat should get banged to no. So like if I would be spending $700K in, you know, a Hoppers Crossing type of asset. Or if they're willing to roll up their sleeves, I would look at somewhere in Geelong where they can add some value around Belmont or Grovedale, or an asset in Leopold. There's so much value out there for $700K in markets that have only done like 20% over the last 5 years and that are, you know, high socioeconomic and that have the propensity to double, not just grow by, you know, like 200K, 300K. I'm talking about going from 700 to 1.2 million. So that's the markets that we like to invest in. And that's where I would get you to look at for 700,000 is the west of Melbourne, the Melton area and pockets of Geelong.
So on that note, a lot of growth forecast on the horizon. Now, Hung, if anyone wants to get in touch with either strategic brokers, starting off with strategic brokers, how can they get in touch?
Easy way. Add us on Instagram, strategic brokers. Mate, send a message and the team will respond straight away. Or jump on our website, www.strategicbroker, without the S, strategicbroker.com.au, because I couldn't afford the S.
Well, you couldn't get the URL broker to come in.
No, some guy trying to make us pay a lot of money for it.
There is one broker. And Dawn, how can people get in touch with the amazing team at Futureproof?
They can hop on the website Futureproof Property, but I actually just want to talk to a client that Hung and his team actually helped as well. They had come to us and their other broker was so slow. And so we had a deal and it was too good to let go, and she wasn't comfortable because she was feeling like her other broker wouldn't have been able to get it done. One of Hung's team was able to sort it out for her, sorted out the trust lending, got them all sorted in record time. And yeah, it's very rare for us to see a broker respond and a team like Strategic Brokers respond as fast as Hung's team does. And just so as everybody knows, before they're like, she's getting paid to say this. No, we actually don't get paid by anybody except for the client. So when I'm recommending anybody, hand on heart, it's because they do a good job. So That's what I would say. Use a broker who's actually built a portfolio and knows what they're doing, guys. And Hung and his team are amazing at what they do.
So you're like, you've got this amazing deal and you're like, you got 5 minutes to get pre-approval.
Yeah, I'm like,
Cool.
I need
Better
help.
call.
Or I'll text Hung and be like, this other broker has said this. I don't think this is right. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not right. So, you got to trust somebody who not only has skin in the game, but has been through so many different scenarios. Like, yeah, you want to use an elite team.
Something that we do once in a while. I don't do it. Not once in a while. I do a fair bit, to be honest. But people come to us with deals sometimes, and somebody else has said no, and then we look at it and there's something wrong here, and we just say, all right, give us everything, all of the paperwork, that you've sent elsewhere if you can, but just obviously black out names, send it to us. Let's have a quick look at it. Our team's pretty quick with that. They'll look at it, pick it up, and go, well, actually, they didn't think about this funder. They've just missed all of this, and they're just looking, it's like, what do you call it? The set of binoculars. You've only got one.
Those blinkers
Tunnel
are
vision.
on.
The blinkers. Sorry, the blinkers are on. Yeah.
They don't have the experience.
And then we get to a thing where, look, can you get a finance clause? Where we're confident. I'd call the BA and say, hey, look, we're confident. Get them in finance clause. I'm almost certain we'll get this deal done within that time frame. Yeah. If they're not losing money, great. If they're going to lose money, then we have to make a decision. Talk with the client. Look, the most you're going to lose is 4,000, 3,000, whatever it is. Let's talk about this. Are you willing to let go of this property, wait a few more months at 2% per month growth, and lose that kind of money, or are you willing to flip the coin today, and gamble and go, hey, look, let's put some confidence in this, and let's just execute, and go ahead with it.
And that's the type of broker you want, because when you have a deal like that where it's like, this is a Frankston deal where it's a matter of like, it was, there was another BA on the deal. We needed to get the offer in, and I knew it was too good. And Hung's team were like, so onto it.
Oh, thanks, Dawn. It wasn't, I'll give you your money later.
Same for Dave.
For all the for all the people out there,
for the BA, you want to make sure it goes through, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's making sure that your client gets the property that's going to set them up for financial success.
Yeah, and like when we know it's a good deal, like we're like dogs with a bone. We're like, who can help us?
Well, even when we see the deal come from the BA, and I'm like, man, you can't miss out on this deal. I buy the deal. When I'm looking and go, I understand where you're sitting. It's that I'm like, if you miss this deal today, it's not the end of the world, obviously, but it's just such a great opportunity to get in today, because the next deal might not come up for 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, right? And 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks in a growth market, it's a long time. Yeah. Like if you looked at what happened in Frankston,
20 grand,
mate. In Frankston, during that period when we were looking at it, I was going, man, these prices are moving every single week we're looking at it. It was just a 1 week bang, 1 week bang, 1 week bang, and the prices was just going. And in the what they say when the market's growing, it grows so fast you can't catch it. It's like putting
it's a
fuel.
wildfire.
Yeah, it's a wildfire as it's going auction. As soon as you get auction campaigns, it's crazy. And you want to set up way before auction campaigning. That's when it starts getting heavy, and that's when you start like jumping off your chair if you're in the area early and going, woo.
Old man yells at cloud. Look, I think that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Hung.
Thank you.
And Dawn Fouhy from Future Proof Advisory. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
That was the How I Met My Broker podcast with Hung Chuy from Strategic Brokers. Now, if you do want to get in touch, rewind just a few minutes on this video, and the team would love to have a chat with all of your broking and BA needs that they can support you with. That is all we have time for today on the podcast. So until next time, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.